Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, Capital One Bank, Eastern Consolidated, M&T Bank, Sterling National Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Customers Bank, Aerial Property Advisors, Perfect Building Maintenance. Additional funding has been provided by AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, AVR Realty Company, Avison Young, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Mortgage Lending, Citizens Bank, Cohen Equities, Colliers International NYC, Collins Building Services, Connect One Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Genova Burns, Handro Properties, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investments, Hodges Ward Elliott Inc., Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Madison Realty Capital, Matone Group, Mercantile Bank, New Banks, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Polsonelli, Rosewood Realty Services, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Knackle Group at Cushman and Wakefield, Maring-Goff Family Foundation, the Moynihan Group, and these friends.
What's really happening today in the New York City real estate market? So today I've assembled this group of 3 individuals who are going to provide their insight on where they see 2017 in light of all these current environments. My guests include the legendary Bruce Mosler, chairman of global brokerage of Cushman and Wakefield, Gino Martocci, who's the head of the commercial bank at M&T Bank, and last but definitely not least, Peter Hauspurg, who's the CEO of Eastern Consolidated. So, normally I would ask him since he's sitting next to me, but he doesn't have his notes with him.
And he's far more entertaining than I am.
Okay. As a banker, how do you see 2017 in light of the environment and what's happening over there?
Look, we interview our clients on a regular basis. We research our clients on a regular basis. They're all optimistic. They're more optimistic than they've been in probably the last 4 or 5 years or longer probably. And activity's up, but everybody's cautious. Everybody's in a wait-and-see mode. I think people now, I think the expectation or the hope for delivery on certain policy changes has to be realized in order for the optimism to continue. And we'll see what happens.
In the green room, Bruce was saying how great the leasing market has started in New York. What's happening?
Well, I think Gino hit the nail on the head. There's sort of this huge optimism that we've entered the new year with. Maybe it's hope based on deregulation, hope based on some tax reform, hope based on job creation. But at the end of the day, it's translating into activity, particularly in the leasing market. We're at 5.9 million feet through the first 2 months versus 4.3 the prior year. That's not a little bit of a bump, that's a substantial bump. To sustain, I come back to what Gino said, we're going to have to see some execution in the marketplace by the administration, specifically on tax reform and deregulation. On the capital market side, Mr. Hauspurg is the expert. I think here in the first few months we're seeing a little bit of a wait and see in terms of the core plus market, core and core plus market in Manhattan.
But didn't we see that last year at the end of the year also, Peter?
Yeah, it's a tale of two markets. There's land and there's income producing. And land now, because No 421A. If you have a piece of land, you don't want to be the guy to build and have 30% of your taxes go off the top, and the next year it gets a 35-year abatement gets enacted. And on the condo land, you have to wait for this huge glut to be absorbed. So prices our deals are off 30-40% on land.
But you were saying also that people are now selling interests. There's a larger number of people selling portions of properties.
Well, if you look at the big office building sales, a lot of them have been 49% sales because
right.
people want to take up some money off the table and
take some
it's
chips
good mark
down
and stay in with a great property.
Yeah.
Gino?
No, I think that's right. I think that land in, I guess, 14, 15, land was predicated on $3,000, $3,500 a square foot condominium, and that you just can't rely on that today. So those volumes are down, but they're not. There hasn't been a lot of transactions, so it's hard to tell exactly where the pricing has landed, and we'll see.
Recently, there was an article in both Forbes, Fortune, about the number of brick and mortar stores that are closing. I mean, we're all aware of, the Macy's, the JCPenney, the Sears, but, Payless is one step from bankruptcy. They're supposed to close stores, and there are numerous, you can go down the list. And then on the other side, you talk about a Neiman Marcus who's planning to open up their first location in New York, and they're talking that they're in major financial difficulties. How do you see the retail world and its effect on the local market?
Well, if you talk to any of the retail leasing guys, things are off all over town, 10, 20%, but especially on the high street retail. These loss leader stores are not holding up anymore in terms of corporate policy.
But we also said something a little bit earlier that I think it bears repetition. We did say that we have to keep perspective in retail because we're coming off historic highs.
Yeah.
And so while we're going to see some fall off right now, that's natural. And arguably the folks that were willing to brand themselves at the top of the marketplace are now being more cautious because loss leaders don't work as well, and most people who are going to be here in high street retail are branded. But still, when you look at this marketplace against other marketplaces for retail around the world, there's still a very healthy, viable marketplace.
Let's not only talk about a high street retail. If you look at what Target is doing today, Target is announcing the signing of leases, not 120,000 square feet, between 25,000 and 45,000. Yes. They just announced the store in Herald Square. They announced a number of stores in Brooklyn in different markets that they're opening up the smaller targets.
They're changing strategy, though, Michael. I think it's important, again, we don't have to talk about high street retail, but let's talk about, as you said now, big box retailers. What we've seen in the last 5, 6, 7 years is an urbanization of America. The gateway cities, the trend to move back from suburbia to the urban environment, and retail is following that now. The reason they want to be in the urban environment in smaller, perhaps, boxes is simply because they want to service the millennials. The millennials are the largest part of this population, and they're following that trend.
But the millennials, that's why Instacart and a number of the delivery services are doing so well.
Look, there's a reason Bezos is the second wealthiest guy in the world right now. People do want online, but people also want in-person experiences. And Target, or high street retail in particular, people want to go in and touch it and feel it and have a shopping experience.
Look,
if you're sitting in your Manhattan
keyword being experience.
Experience. If you're sitting in your Manhattan apartment on a Saturday afternoon, you're living in Manhattan because you want to go out into the world and enjoy it, or Brooklyn.
Right, but take Warby Parker, okay, and you take Bonobus. Some of these places, it was, just the internet. Now the retail location and the sales per square foot in a Warby Parker are getting close to what Apple Store's sales are doing.
Or a Bonobus that has a small store in Soho, but a 15,000-foot distribution facility in Queens.
It's omni-channel. It's got to be you've got to be able to touch the way that people want to shop in all of its formats.
Okay, you're a banker. Peter has a dual life, okay, because he's also on the mortgage committee of New York City M&T. When people are coming to you today as a banker in conservatism, and there's opportunities because a number of banks are out of business or they have a different case, how are you looking at deals? Are you looking at them in a different way today?
Well, I think underwriting's gotten a little bit more conservative, but we're fortunate in the clients that we have, right? Our clients are very well heeled, very experienced. They understand the dynamics of the market as well as any bank, better than any bank. And so what we're doing is structuring deals that work in a rising rate environment, work with sensitized rents, and they're in it for the long haul. So we're comfortable continuing to support at the right basis with the right strategy the clients that we've cultivated over some decades.
How do you look at the condominium market today?
For financing?
Yeah.
Well, we've done fewer deals in the condominium market over the last 2 years, actually. Both 16 and 17, we've only done one deal so far, I think. Look, if it's $3 million and below, if it's $2,000 a foot and below, there's a market.
Sure.
That's right.
If above that, you've got to be very cautious, and there's got to be a lot of equity, and it's got to be the right people.
Very location specific.
Yeah, very location specific.
With regard to location specific, let's talk about certain locations in the city. There was, a lot of people felt that with the 2nd Avenue subway opening up, there would be a great opportunity that the retail stores, which have been dying on 2nd Avenue, 1st Avenue, 3rd Avenue, be doing well. You have a retail division which has really been doing well. How do you see the retail environment and the residential environment on the Upper East Side now that the train has been there?
Oh, it's much healthier now that the construction is down and the train's there. And that's, and 2nd Avenue is mostly neighborhood retail, restaurants and things that service the local residents, not tourists from abroad. So it's, at $100 to $200 a foot, that range is fine.
As a banker, how are you looking at it?
I think the Upper East Side has a certain cachet in a way that it didn't even a few years ago. People want to be there again because it's a neighborhood, it's a value. It's hard to believe.
It's now the value-driven neighborhood. Who'd have thunk it?
And
right?
it's got tremendous amenities. It's got tremendous transportation. Right. So I like the Upper East Side. As an Upper West Sider for 20 years, I can't believe I'm saying that.
But let's talk about a neighborhood that, Mr. Mosler is actively involved with, the Hudson Yards area, where you've seen a lot of trades continuing over there, a lot of them in the hotel business and other areas. How do you see the West Side in that market today with regard to the hospitality market, with regard to the office market, which I'll allow you to talk about in a minute?
Thank you so much.
Okay, and, in general. I mean, the Hudson Yards are a major project. Also, that other Manhattan West, the two largest projects in the neighborhood.
Yes.
But, there's a lot of other areas planned. How do you see that market resilient?
Over on the west side, it's still got a lot to go. It's missing a lot of services, restaurants. The transportation is not all near Penn Station. So, but I'm surprised it's developed as well as it has. But you have new buildings that have amenities that just don't exist in Midtown anymore, and companies have gone for it.
Look, it's wonderful for New York City.
Yeah.
But it's highly skilled developers with a vision for the future, and it's going to take time to build it out, to create the critical sort of street life that makes a vibrant neighborhood. But it's going to come. It just, in the meantime, we're fortunate that it's capitalized well, and that it is leasing up in office space in particular. There are people moving over there, and I think over time it's a wonderful thing for New York City, especially for Manhattan.
So I'd make a few other points. First and foremost, let's take just a half step back and recognize that the average age of stock in Manhattan is about 75 years. For 35 years, no, not quite my age. I'm a little bit older. But pre this, we had a constant for the last 35 years of stock at about 395 million. We're adding about 15 million feet. Let's remember, not everything's getting built. What's getting built is largely pre-leased. The companies that are going there are looking for efficiencies, which only new product can give. They're also looking for 24/7 live, work, play environments, which you all touched upon, because the millennials and the war for talent is real. And to be able to attract that talent, you got to be in locations where they want to be. Connectivity to the High Line, new, efficient product, large floor plates. These are things that are not easy to get in Manhattan. They're not commoditized. That's what's being built. That's why the success is so profound. You're talking about major legacy companies going over there. I don't want to name names, but in droves, in the investment banking, in the banking, in the technology, in the media and advertising sector. These are all the kind of occupants that are interested in and moving there, because the product itself is hard to come by, and with densification being such a large part of the workplace strategy for these companies these days, that's what's driving this. And by the way, just on the minute, I just want to say one more thing, because you made me go last, so I think I get one last comment on this. I said these buildings are being built as a destination location with the retail as part of it, with the food courts, with shopping. If you look what's being done over at Hudson Yards, you're talking about commitments that are being made now for all kinds of high street and big box retail. And at Manhattan West, we are really, really focused on the retail aspect and experience for the folks that will be committing to the space and have committed.
Aren't we seeing that type of office and that type of retail being developed in Lower Manhattan? I mean, you have...
That's the only other place.
Wait, but in Lower Manhattan, you have even much more transportation options.
So let's come back to the transportation debate. I would tell you that Hudson Yards has significant infrastructure in place between the 7 Line and Penn Station, which is the most traveled hub in North America. It's a block from the Gateway, which is where Manhattan West sits.
You're missing. I'm not trying to debate the real estate, the transportation. I'm talking about Lower Manhattan as an alternative, because you have new buildings, you have opportunities, you have great.
Fulton Center is complete.
The Fulton Center is complete. You have the retail over there.
Close to Brooklyn.
It's close to Brooklyn, where the millenniums want to live. Okay, so.
I will tell you that the corporates are weighing in on that conversation right now, and if you look at the way in which they're weighing in, the Far West Side is doing very well.
But wouldn't you agree that when a company is looking today to relocate, they're looking at all areas? They're not saying, I just want to look at Lower Manhattan or the Hudson Yards. They're looking. And as Peter said before, landlords who are in Midtown, who have older buildings, where the tenants really they don't have that much space that they need, landlords are giving good opportunities and good concessions. I mean, you've seen it yourself, right?
Yeah, when you can do a lease at $45 at 41st and Lex, but pay $90 at 19th.
Right, and look at the convenience to your transportation.
Exactly.
Okay, you're looking at over there. We briefly talked about where Brooklyn. Your firm and you personally have had a major involvement with Brooklyn. How do you see Brooklyn growing? And I'd like the other opinions here also.
Look, again, I'll take a half step back.
You can take a quarter of a step back.
Thank you very much. I'll take a quarter step. So if we look back historically, the way that Manhattan moved was that if Midtown was strong and robust and rents were growing and, frankly, demand was high, then Midtown South and downtown followed suit. That equation has changed. You just said it, and I agree 100%. Geographics are not the driving force behind where people go. It's product type, it's neighborhood, it's the amenities. That's the driving location. Brooklyn has, I think, now developed some of the most interesting product type. It's independently an attractive place for businesses to be. I think small and incubator type of businesses really love it because there's room to grow and expand in those neighborhoods. The TAMI sector in that regard likes it.
Manhattan-style rents?
Manhattan-style rents now, you want to be there. You have not because of the rent differential now, because you want to be there.
Because you want to be there.
One of the other areas which is really growing in the city is the promulgation, and you're involved with this, of healthcare. Okay, how are you as a bank looking at this massive amount of healthcare, both the hospitals and the alternative forms of healthcare?
Well, look, demographics and percentage of GDP, as a bank, you have to be in the healthcare business. You're going to be in it one way or the other. However, it's changing so dramatically in how you're paid, who pays you, what you get reimbursed for. In addition to the technology changing and the medicine itself is so rapidly changing, the treatments is rapidly changing, that it's really difficult to stay on top of the healthcare industry, to be totally honest. That said, we see it as an opportunity for the bank. We've got a healthcare business. We tend to stay away from urban hospitals in particular, although we have a number of them, because it's challenging.
I'm also directing to you and to Peter the increased changes, you know, with the outpatient clinics, the emergency center, the urgent care center, as becoming a potential.
I think that's a continue. They're going to continue with that.
We got a real surprise last year at the northwest corner of 56 and Lex, where you could put up a 110,000 foot 25-story tower, and we assumed this was going to be a condo developer at a $900 a foot, and lo and behold, who came in as the buyer but was Hines in partnership with the Welltower REIT to do the first high-end assisted living facility in Manhattan, recognizing that there's an aging population in great apartments on 5th and Park with their kids in Manhattan, but nowhere to go when they need assisted living. So I think these guys were, you know, really foretelling the future.
Bruce, you've been deeply involved in healthcare over the last couple of years, you know, with many of these institutions taking additional space, like NYU going into that building on 41st Street.
222 East 41st,
right.
yes.
So what do you see it growing?
Oh, I think it's outside of the TAMI sector, perhaps the fastest growing segment of the office-using population, for lack of a better way to articulate it, for the very reasons that Peter said. I think that the now idea of a urgent care center, ambulatory care center, where it's walk in, walk out, is where the growth is for that industry, and they're pursuing that.
Question on, you know, we talk about, you know, we're becoming too New York City centric. You know, the people in the Garden State and the Westchester market are looking to do business also. Yep. New Jersey had the Grow Green incentives and other programs, and we've lost some business. Do you see New Jersey doing better these days and taking business from New York City?
I think that New Jersey has always had its place, if you will, for lack of a better way to articulate it, particularly along the Gold Coast, as an alternative to New York. The as-of-right incentives are profound. The product that's being built over there is new and efficient, and for the institutions that want to split their population base, that continues to do very, very well, and I think will on an economic basis for the foreseeable future.
And that
opposed to Westchester, which has been stagnant.
Which has been stagnant, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. You know, we can get into a whole conversation about secondary and tertiary markets, but I think it's
we're seeing a huge demand for warehouse and industrial space in New Jersey.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
You've become a major force in the state of New Jersey. The bank has become really very powerful and really is taking a need. So who are your customer base? Where do you see it? Smaller companies, larger companies?
Our customer base is sort of like it is in the rest of our footprint.
So it's traditional,
mirrors the rest of the footprint. It's our traditional family-owned generational real estate business, middle market companies that are typically family-owned, though not always. And you know, we bank the people that are in the communities we serve.
And the commercials have been great.
Thanks.
Now, with regard to industrial, let's talk about the other phenomena which has come around. You know, the number of people who have taken industrial buildings and have converted them to office. I mean, each and every month we see another building acquired, another person buying, somebody thinking they're going to have additional value added. You seeing that in the investment sales market?
Yeah, we did a building that was vacated for residential. It was 100,000 feet and just missed the condo boom, but the office market, you know, rode down there, and it was sold for almost $1,000 a foot, and they're going to have to get close to $100 a foot in rent, and they'll probably do it. So, meat market as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're actually seeing some extraordinary rent achievement in the meat market. It's become, again, you've seen the gravitation of CEOs who were living Upper East Side or Upper West Side, who now decided that they want to live downtown, and that's brought this sort of rejuvenation of the neighborhood. And people who want to brand their business in that area. Tesla took space downtown. And this is part of what I think is the new millennial, new generation of geography doesn't matter as much as neighborhood.
You know, you're talking about neighborhoods. What about the repositioning of property? It's happening in certain parts in New Jersey and I believe also in Westchester. The municipalities allowing people to change the type of use of the property from office to residential, or they're knocking down the properties. Have you been seeing that great?
My experience in Westchester is it's very difficult to get those kind of approvals.
Yeah. I mean the issue is if it was $29 rents 20 years ago, it's $29 rents today.
Now.
So we need alternative uses.
How do you see the co-working? Do you see them continuing to grow? Or
They are continuing to grow. I think they'll be tested by the next cycle. I think the model is still...
The barrier to entry is so low.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So it's the first time I think we've seen some disruption on the service sector side with what, in terms of volume. The co-working companies today that are succeeding, the major players, have now done more than just provided a B2C, here's your space, plug and go. They've brought a social network to the table for their clients. They have brought a plug and go 24/7, live, work, play anywhere around the world in the gateway cities so that you're a customer, you're a client, you have access everywhere. And with gap law change, at the end of the day, now they're primarily B2C focused at the moment, but they'll turn B2B to look to the enterprise companies, and I think gap law change is going to benefit them in this regard because now that you have to capitalize that lease on balance sheet day one, I think the major players will look for a portion of their portfolio that can be a bit more flexible, that might come off balance sheet. But I think Gino hit the most important point, which is they are owners of the space long term, and they have short-term clients. So the test will come as we move through the cycles to see how they fare.
Isn't that
in that moment of time?
Aren't we similar to that in the hotel business? Someone owns a property and they have a daily occupant?
And like the hotel business, they've created an image in a community, effectively created a community based on their image. Right?
Correct.
Sure.
And what's the life cycle of that? Is I think
right,
along with the
and I
economic
think also
life
it relates to the survival of the fittest.
And
the well-capitalized one.
I think that, by the way, that Michael, I think is the most important point. At the end of the day, there are a few that are positioned to be survivors and many that won't.
So I think in summation, I don't have my crystal apple here. I left it in the back. I'd say that listening to the three of you, there are different trends. We don't know exactly what's happening. Conservative banking is going to be there, support based on lending to people who you know and the different types of things. Retail is going to see some changes. We're seeing a lot of office changes, and the world looks pretty good for 2017. We'll be together when we start the 17th season in September. I'd like to thank Bruce, Gino, and Peter, and I'll see you next week.